The story begins with a boy named Andrew who is extremely shy. Because of his nature, nobody likes him at school, especially since Andrew's family background is quite poor. His father, who was a firefighter, got injured in an accident and had to stay at home permanently. Additionally, he developed a drinking habit. Andrew's mother has cancer and is at the last stage, but Andrew doesn't have enough money to afford her treatment. Andrew recently got a new camera so he could shoot everything. He loved shooting and it was his hobby. As Andrew goes outside with his camera, his father insists on him coming inside because he would always get drunk and beat Andrew. So, Andrew picks up his camera and quickly goes outside. Andrew's cousin, Matt, is coming towards him. Matt is the only one who supports Andrew. He takes Andrew in his car directly to school. Matt helps Andrew in every situation and supports him, but once they reach school, Matt tells Andrew to go in first and that he will come a little later. It turns out that Matt also doesn't want people to see him with Andrew because nobody likes Andrew due to his behavior, and all the students used to harass him. When Andrew arrives at school, he faces the same old behavior, like being harassed by a fat boy. Andrew somehow manages to get through his day. Later, Matt meets Andrew and asks if he would like to come to a party where they could have a lot of fun. But Andrew replies that he doesn't drink and doesn't want to go because people would make fun of him. Andrew returns home with his camera, but suddenly his father arrives and starts hitting him because Andrew hadn't opened the door when called in the morning. Andrew gets very angry about this, so he goes straight to Matt and agrees to come to the party. Matt and Andrew are now at the party. At the party, many people had arrived, but even here, Matt stayed away from Andrew because he didn't want everyone to see him with Andrew. Andrew took out his camera and started filming everything. Matt then went over to his crush, Carrie, who was very drunk and having fun. When Matt tried to talk to her, Carrie ignored him and moved away. Andrew found this amusing and continued filming. However, a man didn't like this at all, as he thought Andrew was being inappropriate. The man scolded Andrew and told him to leave. Andrew felt very hurt by this, so he sat in the garden with his camera, not understanding what mistake he had made that made everyone dislike him. He began to cry a little, but then suddenly, a boy named Steve came up to him. Steve was a famous guy in college, known for having everything, good looks, money, and all the girls chasing after him. Despite this, Steve approached Andrew to talk. Noticing Andrew's camera, Steve said that if Andrew wanted a bit of adventure, he should come with him. Steve had seen something strange in the forest that needed to be recorded. Andrew, eager to explore, called his cousin Matt, and they went into the forest with Steve. After a short while, Steve led them to a large pit that went deep down. Steve wanted to find out what was inside. Although Andrew was quite scared, Steve and Matt started to descend into the pit, so Andrew had to follow them. Andrew kept his camera on throughout the process, continuously filming. After a while, they saw a blue light, and the three of them got closer to it as it grew brighter. Andrew found these things very frightening and told the others that they should leave. However, Steve continued to move towards the blue-colored object, as if he was being drawn to it. As soon as Steve touched the object, its color began to change, and something seemed to be moving over it, advancing towards the three of them. Suddenly, alien-like creatures appeared and attacked them. Blood started to flow from their noses, and the three of them fainted, screaming. A few hours later, the three of them were found outside the cave. Although everything seemed normal, they noticed that they had developed telekinetic powers. With these powers, they could use their minds to control things. For example, they could throw a ball and control its movement with their minds. However, Andrew had gone a step further. He could control everything with his mind and stop it right there. They realized that these telekinetic powers came from the cave, and the mysterious entity that attacked them was the cause. Whenever they used their telekinetic powers, a little blood would flow from their noses. They understood that as they improved their skills, their power would increase. So, they spent a lot of time together, showing off their powers. Gradually, they became very good friends, and Andrew no longer felt lonely. In fact, Andrew had surpassed Matt and Steve in using the telekinetic powers. However, the three of them wanted to find out what in the cave had given them these powers. Therefore, they went back to the forest where the cave was located, only to find that the cave had been sealed. This meant they could no longer learn about the cave or the mysterious entity inside it. Around the area, they saw police officers with tight security. What the police officers had discovered at that location would become clear in time, but for now, Andrew, Matt, and Steve had their powers. They began to use their abilities quite effectively, and gradually their powers grew stronger, especially Andrew, who was always thinking about and enhancing his powers. Finally, something good was happening in his life, and he was enjoying the adventures. However, amidst all these adventures, Andrew stopped thinking about his mother. His mother's health was deteriorating, and she needed medication, but Andrew didn't know how he could afford all this on his meager salary. Whenever he had free time, he would use his telekinetic energy to try out different objects. The three of them explored these powers together, having a lot of fun and thoroughly enjoying themselves. But one day, Andrew's telekinetic powers almost cost a man's life. It happened when Andrew and the others were in a car, and suddenly another car started overtaking them from behind. Annoyed by the constant honking, Andrew used his energy to push the car away, causing it to veer off the road and injure the driver severely. The driver was on the brink of death, but Steve managed to save him. After this incident, Matt and Steve were quite angry with Andrew. They pulled over to discuss the situation, agreeing that their powers should not cost anyone their life. They decided to set some rules. They should not use their powers publicly, on any person or animal, and they should avoid using their powers when angry. The three of them agreed to these rules and continued to develop their powers. One day, Andrew and Matt were called by Steve to a different location, which was quite a desolate area. After arriving, they couldn't find Steve anywhere. But shortly after, when they looked up at the sky, they saw that Steve was flying in the air. That means Steve had developed a new ability that allowed him to fly very quickly through the air. Andrew and Matt also tried it and began flying as well. The three of them soared into the sky, flying like birds. The surprising part came when Steve narrowly avoided a collision with a plane, and Andrew saved him just in time. The three of them quickly descended back to the ground. From then on, a strong friendship developed between Steve and Andrew, and they decided to support each other in everything. Andrew began spending a lot of time with Steve, and they shared personal details about their lives. Steve confided in Andrew that his parents did not talk to each other, which made him feel lonely, and he considered this situation the worst. Andrew also shared details about his family, including how his mother had cancer and he had no money to treat her. His father was very ill and drank excessively, which Andrew did not like at all. The two had become very good friends. Steve had a plan to make Andrew famous at school. He suggested that Andrew perform a magic show, with Steve's help, and they could amaze people using their powers. Andrew, now confident, performed the show in front of everyone and did so impressively, which left everyone very impressed. Before long, Andrew became quite famous in his school. Andrew was very grateful to Steve for helping him achieve this, as he had always wanted to be liked by everyone. However, upon returning home, Andrew's father yelled at him a lot. He questioned why Andrew was so happy while his mother was struggling with cancer. Andrew now traveled directly by flying to school instead of going by car with Matt. His father was unaware of this and was yelling at him, feeling a sort of resentment towards his son. But Andrew ignored all these issues and went to a very big party. All his school friends were there, and they were showing him a lot of respect since he had become famous. A girl named Monica even got very close to Andrew, and they ended up kissing. Andrew took Monica to a room where they could share their private moments, while Matt also found his crush, Carrie, and they left together. At this point, Steve, with Andrew's camera, was filming and saw Monica leaving the room with vomit all over her body. The issue was that Andrew had drunk too much, and it was his first time, so he couldn't handle it and ended up vomiting on Monica. Monica, upset, was angrily berating Andrew as she left, saying things that Andrew had heard all along. This made Andrew realize that no matter how popular he became, people's perception of him would remain the same. He was always considered a loser and would continue to be seen that way. This realization made Andrew extremely angry, and he felt very low. Steve, coming to Andrew's aid, tried to reassure him that things would get better. However, after these events, Andrew's behavior became quite destructive. He would destroy anything he came across. When Andrew was in his room, his father came in, shouting at him after seeing the party photos. His father felt that Andrew had completely lost his mind and was not thinking about his family, especially since his mother was critically ill. His father's anger was compounded by Andrew's existing mental turmoil, and he even began to physically assault Andrew. Eventually, Andrew, unable to tolerate this anymore, used his powers to kill his father and throw him away. This event left Andrew extremely angry and even more unhinged. He started using his powers in bizarre ways, causing harm to anyone he targeted. Meanwhile, for some unknown reason, blood was also coming from Matt's nose. So, Matt called Andrew and Steve, but neither of them picked up. Matt, thinking it was a normal occurrence, got busy with his girlfriend. Meanwhile, Steve flew into the sky to search for Andrew, as he suspected Andrew was around. Andrew was indeed there, generating electricity all around with his powers. He felt terrible about his condition. In reality, the three of them were connected because they all had the same powers. If any of them pushed their powers beyond their limits, blood would start coming from their noses. Steve tried to explain to Andrew that there was no need to be so stressed and that they were all there for him. But Andrew insisted that if he didn't have these powers, no one would care about him, and he felt betrayed by everyone. Despite Steve's repeated efforts to calm him down, Andrew's anger would not subside. Suddenly, the electricity around them intensified, and a bolt of lightning struck Steve directly. Steve was severely injured and fell from such a height that he died. Andrew seemed to be indifferent to Steve's death. The next day, all the students attended Steve's funeral. When Matt learned of these events, he began to suspect Andrew. Matt confronted Andrew, asking him what he had done, but Andrew flew away without giving any answers, as if Steve's death didn't bother him at all. Andrew's behavior became increasingly aggressive, and he no longer listened to anyone. He began to see himself as superior to humans, believing that no one could defeat him. His powers grew to the extent that he could crush an entire car with a single gesture. The next day at school, when Andrew arrived, everyone mocked him about the vomiting incident, especially the overweight student who always troubled him. This time, Andrew could not tolerate it and used his powers to knock out the overweight student's teeth. This act was extremely painful, and Andrew no longer cared about how others felt. He was solely focused on his own benefit and satisfaction. Andrew saw people as insignificant insects. When Matt learned about this incident, he went to talk to Andrew, questioning what he was doing. Andrew, now extremely angry, couldn't understand anyone's concerns. All he could think about was his mother's deteriorating condition and his lack of money for her medication. He felt he needed to focus on fixing his mother's health. Andrew told Matt to leave and never return. He then began to think about how he could help his mother. To do this, he put on his father's costume and used his powers to rob people, causing injuries in the process. Andrew even went to a gas station, where he was committing theft. When a police officer tried to stop him, Andrew deflected the attack, leading to a massive explosion. Andrew was injured in the explosion and admitted to the hospital. After all these events, Andrew learned that his mother had passed away. His father arrived at the hospital and berated Andrew for his negligence, blaming him for his mother's death. Feeling utterly miserable, Andrew didn't listen to anything and grabbed his father's hand, causing a massive explosion. The blast was so intense that the entire floor of the building was destroyed. Matt realized what was happening because he had blood coming from his nose, indicating he was also connected to the power disturbances. He rushed to the scene to calm Andrew and prevent further destruction. Matt managed to save Andrew's father and took him to a safe location. Then, he went directly to Andrew, who was now flying and wreaking havoc across the city. Matt tried to explain to Andrew why he was behaving this way. He pointed out that Andrew now had everything he needed and could use his powers for good. However, Andrew was enraged, feeling that if he didn't have these powers, none of these people, including Matt, would be with him, implying they were all pretending to care. Despite Matt's attempts to convince him otherwise, Andrew was too angry to listen. Andrew started overturning cars, causing them to fall. Matt tried to save the people affected, but the situation escalated. Andrew attacked Matt at high speed, trying to kill him. A fierce aerial battle ensued between Matt and Andrew, but Matt's powers were not as strong as Andrew's. Andrew severely injured Matt and continued to attack him. He even used his powers to throw large buses and trains at Matt, while destroying buildings in seconds. Matt realized that if Andrew wasn't stopped, he would destroy the entire city. While Andrew was busy causing chaos, Matt managed to drive a spear, which was part of a statue, into Andrew's body, killing him on the spot. Although Matt was seriously injured during the battle, he quickly flew away as the police began arriving, knowing he couldn't explain the situation to them. After killing Andrew, Matt felt terrible but embarked on a journey to a snowy mountain. He shared his feelings about how Andrew's death left him feeling miserable. He couldn't tolerate that these unknown powers had taken the lives of two of his friends. Determined to uncover the truth behind these powers, Matt traveled to a place linked to Andrew, a mountain in Tibet. Matt traveled to a large temple located in Tibet, seeking answers about the mysterious powers. As he continued his journey to uncover the truth, whether he will find the answers he's looking for remains to be seen in the next part of the story. Thus, the story ends here.